Hey, kia ora. Welcome to April 29th, Genealogy and History. This is where we take a look at events and people who did something on this day in history, and where we encourage you to check out your family tree. Is there someone in your family tree who participated or witnessed in the events that took place on this day in history? Or could it be that one of the people we mention may actually be in your family tree? So it's good to go looking and hunting out those secrets. Anyway, so for April 29th, we have starting in 1429 going through to 2004. So we're going to be covering a wide range of eras today. So let's get this show on the road. Okay, all right. So on this day in 1429, Joan of Arc arrives at the siege of Orleans. And if you don't know much about Joan of Arc, go check out her story. She's a very interesting character. As a young teenager and stuff, the armies that she led and everything else. And then she's actually now known as Saint Joan of Arc because she was canonized a few centuries later. But what was interesting is that 75 years after she was executed, they actually found her, and she was burned at the stake. They actually found her innocent. 75 years after they burned her at the stake, they found her innocent. But she was only 19 when she was burned at the stake. In 1553, Flemish woman introduces the practice of starching linen into England. And I remember when I was in the Air Force, every Thursday was laundry day, and so we would have to take our sheets and pillowcases down to the barrack warden's office. We'll get issued with freshly laundered, starched sheets and pillowcases, take them back to our rooms, make up our beds, all that sort of stuff. But the really cool part is that on laundry day, and unless I'd been working out, I typically did not take a shower at night, but on laundry day, I did. I always made sure I had a nice shower, put some body lotion on and stuff, and then sliding into those crisp, fresh, clean sheets. Nothing like it. It was awesome. But to think that was introduced into England in 1553. In 1587, Sir Francis Drake sails to into Cadiz, Spain, and sinks the Spanish fleet. I need to enunciate. He was an interesting person too. In 1623, 11 Dutch ships depart for the conquest of Peru. So I don't know, my handwriting has just been a complete mess. I can't read it. So 11 Dutch ships depart for the conquest of Peru. In 1701, Drenthe, Netherlands adopts the Gregorian calendar, and tomorrow would be May 12th of 1701. So up until that point, there was the Julian calendar, and then a couple of years before that, the Gregorian calendar was introduced, and it was all to do with the how the Julian calendar did not allow for the number of days going around the sun and allowing for the extra hours that we get and all that sort of stuff. And so the Gregorian calendar came out, and it was slowly adopted around the world. And so when you're looking back in genealogy, you really do have to watch the dates when you get around the early 1700s, late 1600s, because you've got to watch out, is the date on the Julian calendar or the Gregorian calendar? And the Gregorian is the one that we use today, because there was that time that when the calendars were introduced, when you adopted using that calendar, you lost several days. So like, today's April 29th, but on the Gregorian calendar, tomorrow, when it was introduced, tomorrow was May 12th of 1701. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So in genealogy, you really got to watch those dates and know what areas introduced which calendars of which were using which calendars at which time, because there was a few years where the process was switched over. So it made it very interesting. Just imagine getting letters that are dated before you get them. No, dated after you get them. Yeah, depending on how long it took to get there. In 1707, the English and the Scottish parliaments accepted Act of Union, which created the United Kingdom of Great Britain, and that came into being on the 1st of May. In 1715, the English astronomer John Flamsteed observed Uranus for the 6th time. And you got to think, they didn't have a, when you think of the telescopes that we use today and the magnification we can get on those, I don't even know if they had telescopes back at that time. They must have had something that they were able to magnify to see planets and things out there. Because remember, there was one that we had the other day where Pluto was first seen. I was sort of like, wow, with the technology that they had at the time, what sort of instruments or viewing or scopes were they using to be able to see Pluto, which is on the outer rim of our universe? So it's very interesting just hearing about these things. So we're up to April 29th, 1769. Scottish engineer James Watts, a very important person, just keep hearing, had a patent for the steam engine with a separate condenser enrolled, and it was patent number 913. And the international standard of unit of power, the watt, was named after James Watt in 1882. He actually passed away in 1819. So that's where the term watt and wattage comes from. It actually was named after him in 1882. 1813, the first U.S. rubber patent was granted to Jacob F. Hummel. In 1834, Charles Darwin's expedition sees the top of the Andes Mountains from Patagonia. Imagine the view that would have been. Oh, that would have been awesome. In 1845, Macon B. Allen and Robert Morris Jr. are the first African Americans to open a law practice in the U.S. It didn't say where they opened the law practice, but I'm sort of like, that's really cool. I like that. In 1852, the first edition of Peter Roget's Thesaurus was published in Great Britain, and it's still used to this day. I mean, 1852. In 1854, the Lincoln University of Pennsylvania receives its charter from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, making it the first degree-granting black college in the U.S. Oh, that was so cool. I love seeing when things started. Who was the first to do this? Who was the first to do that? What was the first college that came out that did this, that, and the other thing? What was the first, plane that flew? Oh, there's a great debate on that one. And being a Kiwi, I can get into that debate with the Americans very easily. But we're not going to go there. So it's always interesting to me that when did these things start? Who was the first person to jump out of a plane with a piece of material on their back? We learned about that one yesterday. 1857, the U.S. Army Pacific Division headquartered permanently forms in Presidio in San Francisco, and I have been through Presidio a couple of times on an open-air fire engine. You know about the open-air fire engine? They have a 1930s style open-air fire engine that you get to sit in the back where all the hoses would go, and they take on this really cool tour around San Francisco, and you actually drive through the Presidio. And I love the movie Presidio. It's got my favorite James Bond guy in there, Sean Connery. It's got Sean Connery in there, and it deals with a murder that took place at the base, and you're having to deal with the military law and the civilian law coming together and kind of joining forces to get the information out there. In 1864, the Battle Gate Pa, which is known as Jeepers, what is with my voice today? Pukehinahina. This is a place in New Zealand near Tauranga, and if you're looking at a map of Tauranga, look at the map, and you've got that on the east coast, so you've got the bump that goes out the side, then it goes up, and there's another little bit. It's within that. It's called the Bay of Plenty. Is where Tauranga is. Sorry, Bay of Plenty. So the Battle of Gate Pa was 1,700 British troops suffered their worst defeat in the New Zealand wars at the hands of 230 entrenched Maori warriors in Tauranga. 230 against 1,700 and the 231. Isn't that cool? I love stories like this. I don't know. And the fact that it was on home soil as well. So that was 1864. So that's 24 years after the Treaty of Waitangi was signed between the Europeans and the Maoris. In 1882, the Electromote, the forerunner to the trolley bus, is tested by Werner von Siemens in Berlin. The namesake of Siemens' unit of electrical, he's also the namesake of the Siemens unit of electrical conductance, and he played an integral role in the development of telegraph industry, and he was the founder of Siemens AG, a huge successful industrial manufacturing company. So, that all started in 1882. In 1886, the first Dutch electricity service begins. Isn't this cool? People. What was that one? There's a Christmas movie. I have to think of the title of it because it's really cool. This minister comes into town and tries to bring in electricity, and yeah, let's just say it didn't go too well. On April 29th, 1927, the construction of the Spirit of St. Louis is completed, and this is the monoplane which Charles Lindbergh was to fly across the Atlantic in. In 1930, the telephone connection between Britain and Australia goes into service. So, that would be so cool to witness that. 1839, the Whitestone Bridge connecting New York boroughs of the Bronx and Queens opened. On April 29th, 1953, the first U.S. experimental 3D TV, yes, 3D TV in 1953, the first U.S. experimental 3D TV broadcast showed an episode of Space Patrol on Los Angeles ABC affiliate KECA TV. So yes, the first experimental 3D TV was back in 1953. So some of this stuff just blows my mind. Because all of a sudden it becomes popular in the state, and then you go back in history and you find out it's been around for years, but nobody's just done anything about it. In 1957, the first military nuclear power plant was dedicated at Fort Belvoir in Virginia. 1967, and I love this song. This woman had such an incredible voice. In 1967, Aretha Franklin released her single, Respect. It became the Billboard Song of the Year for 1967. That is just such an incredible song. I always remember her in the Blues Brothers too. She was awesome in that. In 1971, Boeing received the contract for sorry, I had to read my handwriting. I was going, that doesn't look right. Boeing received the contract for Mariner 10, which was a robotic space probe that was launched by NASA on the 3rd of November 1973 to fly by Mercury and Venus. It was the last spacecraft of the Mariner program. In 1977, British Aerospace is formed. I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought they'd been around a lot longer than 1977. In 1990, and I'm excited about this because I actually have a piece of this. In 1990, wrecking cranes began tearing down the Berlin Wall at the Brandenburg Gate. And I had a friend who was over in Germany, and they came back and said, we've got some stuff for you. And they brought back a couple of postcards. And then they gave me this little plastic bag. I go, what's this? And it was actually a piece of the wall, and you can see a piece of the graffiti that was on the wall. It's so cool. It's one of my treasured little things. In 1995, the longest sausage ever at 28.77 miles was made in Kitchener, Ontario. A 28.77 mile sausage. I'm like, that just blew my mind. But hang on, the record was broken on December the 1st, 2014 in Romania with a sausage that was 38.99 miles. Well, they couldn't go just a little bit to make it exactly 39? That's kind of cool. So now the record for the longest sausage is 38.99 miles. I wonder how many people that would feed. That'd be a good sausage fest, that one. And then our last entry for today is on April 29th, 2004, Oldsmobile builds its final car, ending 107 years of production. So wow, 107 years. That's a long time. But yeah, so the Oldsmobile closed their factories in 2004. So that's what happened on this day in history, April 29th. Is there anybody in your family tree who participated in any of these things? That may have worked on some of the projects that we saw there, like the buildings of bridges, the buildings of the steam engines, the building of the the 3D TV thing. Did they participate in making those events happen? Did somebody in your family tree witness those events? Like, did you have family that in 1953 watched that 3D TV broadcast? Did you have anybody in your family who actually watched it? Any of the people that we mentioned today, are they in your family tree? Like Sir Francis Drake, where did that guy's name go? Charles Lindbergh, James Watts, the guy Simons, who's I don't know where it's been, Charles Darwin, all these different people that were mentioned today. Are any of them in your family tree? Go find, go research, go have a look. You might be surprised at who is actually in your tree or what events that they participated in or witnessed. Those make great family stories when you can turn around and talk about certain events in history and know that they were they're part of your family story and part of where you came from. Have a super fantastic, sparkling day, and we will catch you guys tomorrow for Genealogy and History, April 30th. He konera.